Our nation can only be as strong as our health, and we're not doing well now. We have twice the chronic disease of Europe and 4 times that of Mexico, Japan, China, and India. 75% of our medical costs are caused by chronic disease by things that we can prevent. Only if America stops the influx of chronic disease. Only if each individual stops their own chronic disease can we lead in healthcare, and can America be a vibrant country with a high standard of living.
Within creation of health, we're helping to take a person who is not yet sick, has not developed a problem, and prevent them from ever going down the path to sustaining that illness. So as I'm identifying patients with disease, I would have a subset of patients who I couldn't find a cause for the problem. Well, then when I discovered the amazingly strong association between mouth disease and the things that I do treat, like blood pressure, diabetes, heart attacks and strokes, even things like pneumonia, and a whole long list of systemic diseases that can originate from disease in our mouth, that was another turning point in my career. Once I looked inside the mouth, I found the source of a lot of problems in people who otherwise might not have had their problems identified.
The mouth and the rest of the body relate anatomically and functionally, and that's why the oral systemic connection is absolutely inherent in the way we're put together.
From a disease standpoint, when we have different situations in the mouth, we respond, our body responds with inflammation, and that's where we start the inflammatory cascade that's affecting most of these inflammatory diseases. I want you to think about this. Inflammation, and there's a concept called inflammatory burden. When you get more inflammation in your system, the accumulation of that will have a tipping point where you tend to have inflammatory disease. Inflammatory diseases are heart attacks, strokes, diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis, various cancers, kidney disease, pancreatic cancer. The list goes on and on and on.
We're in a state of chronic inflammation, and that's the basis for every disease that everyone has. It's the basis for cardiovascular disease. It's the basis for cancer. When you're dealing with periodontal disease, there's this entire inflammatory cascade going on that people don't understand. When you get a cut, for example, okay, your body is set up to heal that cut, and that goes through a process of inflammatory response to solve the problem and resolve. If you always have a chronic inflammatory bacterial condition in your mouth, then you never turn off that process of inflammation. In other words, it never gets the opportunity to resolve and go away. There's just too much. The body can't react to all of them, and the body gets sick.
Periodontal disease, periodontitis, gum disease, whatever you call it, it all begins with bacteria. Bacteria are microscopic organisms, and in your mouth, there are billions. Over time, these bacteria can stick together and multiply over and over again. They can then form a colony and join together to create a thick layer called a plaque biofilm. Then, over a short period of time, it can dramatically spread throughout all of your mouth, teeth, gums, tongue, cheeks, everywhere. If there's an opening in your bloodstream in your mouth, the harmful bacteria can enter, causing the body many sicknesses. But there is another problem that occurs in response to the bacteria as your body tries to fight back. Inflammatory cells are triggered to try and kill the bacteria. But bacteria build their own strong defenses and battle back. This microscopic war ensues, and the result? Chronic inflammation. And inflammation is the basis for so many diseases.
So bacteria is basically a foreign organism that comes into our body and attacks our body and causes disease. And that can be picked up from a door handle, or I've, strangely enough, had a couple of patients who have had periodontal disease transmission from their dogs, from feeding them treats and not washing their hands afterwards and eating, or letting their dogs kiss them. So when you were growing up and your mom would say, don't drink after your brother, or don't share that popsicle with your friend down the street, you're gonna get germs, or go wash your hands, you were just outside and you might have germs. Those germs are the bacteria that then can go into your mouth and set up infection.
So we say to the dental patient, you have an infection in your gums. The total area of your gums is about the size of the palm of your hand. If you looked at the palm of your hand and you saw an open wound the size of the palm of your hand, would you just decide not to do anything about it? And yet people are choosing every day not to address the infection in their mouths. People think that it's normal that when they brush their teeth, their gums bleed. And I don't know where they came up with that.
If there's a little blood in the sink, it means they've got a problem. The bacteria that cause inflammation in the mouth will typically cause inflammation in the rest of the body. Yet if there's a little inflammation between the teeth, it means that there's a problem where those high-risk bacteria may be getting into their bloodstream and cause any one of the many systemic diseases that can originate from bacteria in the mouth.
We've always had a keen interest in the health of the mouth in our work to prevent heart attacks and strokes, and that has just intensified as the science has evolved. We now have great science telling us that the cause of arterial disease is inflammation. And another source of arterial inflammation is infection in the mouth. With the most recent study coming out, it actually implies up to 50% or more of acute heart attacks are triggered by oral infection. That's huge. Heart attacks are the #1 killer in this country. Strokes are the #1 cause of disability. The current cost of cardiovascular disease to our healthcare system is about $518 billion. And it's all preventable.
Inflammation sets up a reaction that causes things in our body that makes us less responsive to insulin, which is how we develop type 2 diabetes. So whether it is inflammation from just a fat belly, or whether it's inflammation from gum disease, or whether it's inflammation because you've got a chronic abscess someplace, it causes the same process of a resistance to insulin, which leads to type 2 diabetes, or is the hallmark of type 2 diabetes.
Even mild periodontal infections, when it occurs in combination with some other secondary infection, could cause severe adverse outcomes. And for periodontal disease, it tends to be ignored because it doesn't kill. But I think what we're showing here is periodontal disease does kill, because if the bacteria gets into the blood circulation and gets to the uterus, it could kill the baby.
They now tell us that half of America has a condition known as periodontal disease. Well, what it says to me is half the people that now go into surgery have this condition, and we know what can happen with this condition in surgery. The body can only fight infection on so many fronts, and it's like a war. It has a certain amount of resources it can allocate to that fight. And when you have an infection elsewhere in your body, it's allocated resources to that infection site. And then when you go in and do a surgery, you create another wound, and that wound demands that the body put attention to it too. So the reason you don't do surgeries on patients who have infections is because it diminishes their ability to recover from the surgery and increases the likelihood that any other bacteria could then take hold because there just aren't enough antibodies to fight that infection.
It's clear to see that the inflammatory burden caused by periodontal disease is a serious problem. For the mouths of America to get healthier, there is a specially trained group of men and women in this country who will have to step forward and provide preventive care. Some refer to them as oral medicine specialists. We know them as the dentist.
Now the dentist is looking through a wider scope, a wider viewfinder, and now being a screener, looking at a wider context of treating the whole person versus just the mouth. And we're not saying dentists are going to replace medicine. No, they're now partners with. And they are the first line of defense because the mouth is that first indicator. And check this out. 9 out of 10 patients who go to a dental office do not have a primary care physician on their medical history form.
The public, government, insurance, caregivers, and even dentists themselves have to begin to think of dentistry as part of the first line of defense against disease and sickness. The distinction between the standard dentist and a complete health dentist is extremely important. The standard dentist does a good job of taking care of teeth and the mouth, but a complete health dentist focuses not only on care of teeth and the mouth, but also cares for the complete health of the individual.
I know we're going to make some vast changes in people's lives for the better. We're going to save a lot of lives. We're going to improve a lot of health. We're going to save a lot of healthcare costs. And I have no doubt that the world will be a better place because of all the work all of these passionate individuals are doing.
There doesn't have to be any one hero. There just has to be a whole lot of heroes working together.
One of the keys in everyone getting healthy is decreasing inflammation. And the most powerful thing we know about decreasing inflammation is taking care of your gums. And dentistry has a key role in that.